Welcome to What is Good, a podcast from the Texas Baptist Christian Life Commission, where we explore contemporary cultural issues through a biblical lens. Micah 6:8 says that God has told us what is good, that we're to do justice, to love kindness, and to walk humbly with Him. So whether you're seeking a better understanding of how to live that out, or you're just curious to understand a Christian perspective of what's happening in our culture, we hope that you'll find today's conversation helpful as we discuss what is good.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to another episode of What is Good, the Christian Life Commission podcast. After 6 months of being away, and by demand, people were knocking on the doors, picketing outside my house. When's she going to be back? When is she going to be back? It is our Director of Hunger and Care, Dr. Irene Gallegos.
I'm back.
You said that in a slightly ominous way. I like that. All right. And also Dr. Katie Fouget, our esteemed and whatever other adjective you want to add, director.
Yay, I'm back too, but I wasn't gone as long as Irene. So I'm really excited Irene's back.
Yeah, I mean, well, honestly, you're the only one who's been on the last 3 podcast episodes because you introduced all of the keynotes.
Oh, yeah, technically. Yes, y'all have heard my voice. So
yeah, you're due for a break. If you want one, we love having you here.
Yes.
Sadly, lawyer, not a Dr. John Litzler, cannot join us today. For people who don't know, I said that as Irene was taking a glass of water purposefully to watch her. And I am your associate director and still director of ethics and justice, but I haven't figured out how to share both of those titles in a smooth way. Maybe we can workshop it off pod, though. Dr. David Sanchez here with you to lead us in another discussion. And we've been kind of all over the state.
Yeah.
Since Advocacy Day, we've been doing a lot of interesting things, and we just kind of want to share some of what we've been up to. But first, Advocacy Day is over. We had 3 amazing keynotes on our last 3 episodes, and it was a great time. But I'm just curious if either of you would like to share anything else. What are your big highlights from the event? What are your big takeaways from Advocacy Day?
It was a joy to see the variety in the room. I think we had a lot of professionals in the room, people who are familiar with advocacy work and really had a high level understanding and could probably name off their representatives. But it was also neat to see some new faces in the room. And so it was fun to hear the different conversations, to get to know people, and even from the varying levels of expertise in the room on policy, fun to get to see how they engaged on Tuesday as well. And so I think that was my favorite part, was seeing the kind of rubber meets the road, let's put it into action. And personally, I got to witness my husband, Stephen, he joined us, and see him go into action and really digest what he learned from Monday and apply it on Tuesday. And so that was a personal joy to be able to see that.
Oh, that's so cool.
Yeah, I mean, there's a few different things I would highlight. Honestly, I'm not going to pick one. It was really just encouraging to see the team come together. There was a lot of behind the scenes work, and everybody just coalesced together, had a positive attitude. Without going into a lot of details, there's just a lot of things that kind of got dropped, or, things that were supposed to get done. And nobody complained about it. Everybody just rallied together and was like, hey, we're going to do this. And it was just a joyful experience. And I felt like it was a good experience for us as a team, and bringing in spouses. Irene's husband was there, my husband was there, and just getting to know people in a new way and capacity. That was a really fun side of it that probably other people didn't see, but just for me, just for our team, I was like, this is so fun. I love this. Just even some of the side conversations, sitting on the rooftop one night talking with Irene and her husband and just laughing and just making memories like that. That meant a lot to me. I loved a lot of that. And then second to that, more Advocacy Day related, like Irene said, the follow-up on Tuesday was really fun. I got to take some of the attendees to see committee hearings, and that's such a different experience than really about anything else, going into the committee, seeing that. Yeah. And they loved it, kind of seeing the real time, kind of this is how the sausage is getting made. It just really opened their eyes and made them excited, and I think kind of maybe even gave them a little bit of the advocacy bug. So that was really fun just to see the Tuesday efforts.
Now, neither of you have mentioned how amazing our hotel rooms were.
I was thinking the hotel and the recognition on Tuesday as well. But yes, the hotel.
Tell the hotel, David.
If you like feeling like a hamster, squeezing into a small space. I was not prepared for it. I told Katie, like, I've lived in a house where our master bathroom was bigger than this hotel room.
It was very European.
It was European. It reminded me of like, I've seen YouTube videos of like those small apartments in Japan where like everything folds away and like all of the space is so economically used. I think it shows testimony though to how great the people we had visiting were. Like no one complained about it, and they could have, and instead people were like, well, this is a unique experience and enjoying it. Like two people who I was really concerned, are they going to be okay with this? They opened the door, walked in, and just laughed. But it was also like so tech savvy, right? Like everything was controlled on an iPad, and you could like change the colors across the spectrum for the glow coming from the bathroom shower curtain, which was, you know, just literally right there in the middle of this tiny room.
I said it felt like a dorm room, except this. I went to Texas Baptist University, and so I said, except this time I could be with my husband with the door closed. But it just felt. It was like just this little nook.
Yeah, that's exactly what it felt like.
Yeah, that's great. That's great. And so just so people can imagine it, maybe we could put some pictures up, so they can link it in the pod notes. But like the length of the bed was also the width of the room.
There was a king bed, so you know.
Yeah, it was like shoved all the way to the back, and the length of the bed was the width of the room. But they made it work, and it made it a more memorable and enjoyable experience.
Yes.
So, and some advocating happened as well.
Some advocating happened.
Yeah. All right. So moving on to more recently, with what the CLC has been up to lately. Most notably, John cannot be joining us today, Katie. So could you just share like what his efforts have been and really what the two of you have been up to more recently?
Yeah, so we're over halfway through the Texas legislative session now. And John does such a phenomenal job keeping a constant presence in the Texas Capitol. He is really literally there every day. He's there late. One of the things I try to encourage him with often is, John, I just wish more people could see what you do, because so much of his work is invisible. It's the late hours. It's just showing up in the Capitol. And he does that so well. And not only does he show up, he's actively involved in giving testimony, dropping cards, which is basically showing a legislator your support or not supporting a bill. And so he's just there. He's there often, and I try to be there as much as I can to support him. It's not nearly as much as he deserves or as much as I would like, but we were in Austin together even just yesterday. He gave testimony supporting a bill that would provide AC in prison. I believe we've got an episode about that people can go and listen to be able to hear about that and understand why we care about AC in prisons and Texas prisons. And then we also were able to split up and go around and drop some cards supporting fair and just financial practices to talk about a bill that we felt like would exploit people in an unfair way financially. And so that's just the kind of a day in the life of what John gets to do. And it was fun to get to see him. But what was interesting and just encouraging to me walking around with John is how many people knew him and were just like, hey, John, there he is. And for those who have already heard this, I'm sorry, but I say this all the time. It's perfect that the moniker he's developed is John the Baptist around the building, because it works on so many levels. It's so great. Shout out to Jennifer Almond, our friend at the Catholics. She came up with that, but she claims it, but she says it's the best nickname that she's ever come up with, and she's very proud of it.
Love it.
For Christmas, should we get him like a robe of camel hair and some like locusts and honey?
What if we made him a little doll? Like it's him, like his head, but like John the Baptist.
Oh, but he's listening to this. Maybe we'll edit this.
We'll have to work on it.
Or this is our way of knowing if John listens to our podcast.
Oh, and it's not us? Okay, we'll see. We'll see if his face is disappointed when we do nothing for him for Christmas. Yeah, we're so excited. We really appreciate the work he does, and when you have the time to go down as well and support him, especially on the AC and Texas prisons. Not everything we're advocating for is going to be a victory, but we also appreciate just his heart and his manner, even in discussing stuff, that we don't lose heart when there are things that we think, wow, we really do believe that this is what is honoring to God and honoring to his word, and yet it's not going to get passed, or this is something we don't think is honoring to his word and it is going to get passed, but that in the end, we're also being a witness for Christ there, and he keeps all of that in focus and never misses the fact that while he advocates, he's also representing Christ, not just Texas Baptists.
Yes.
And he just does it so well and with such an amazing, ironically, non-very lawyerly heart. Like
Yes,
he's so
agreed.
compassionate for a lawyer. I still can't get over it.
John the Baptist.
John the Baptist.
Apology to any lawyers listening who are offended by that stereotype. All right. So apart from our work at the Capitol, we've also had the privilege of being at lots of different conferences recently. We were at Congreso in March 20 and 22. I was at iCare in Corpus Christi at the beginning of April, and then just this little bit after that week, we were also at Pursue with WMU, and I felt like this would be a great time just to let everybody know, like, what are some of the other workshops that we give? You've heard some of our topics, through our podcast. We kind of regurgitate that here. But I just thought, what a great episode what have we been up to since Advocacy Day? And what are some of the conversations that we've been able to have through these workshops? So Irene, you were at Congreso with me, right?
Yes.
And first of all, we need to let people know that she is the CLC booth master extraordinaire.
I think it's event specific.
Yes.
Event specific.
You make the best booths, Irene. Like, you send pictures when you're out even with the hunger offering or something like that, and every time it blows my mind.
Yeah, so can you just share, what have you done, like what you do at Congreso with the booth, or what you've done in the past to get the young adults engaged, and just so they can hear about what the CLC does and what we do with the hunger offering?
Yeah, so that's exactly it. My goal is getting to know the audiences a little bit more and seeing how they engage. A different example that I want to start out with is in February, our ministry assistant Chantel went to the preschool summit, and for children's ministry and preschool leaders. And I said, hey, Chantel, they do giveaways. And I said, I want to do a basket giveaway for missions education surrounding the hunger offering. And so we put together this little basket of ideas that put together this brief curriculum, kind of a 4 or 5 days where you can walk preschoolers or children through creation care, world hunger, what these different issues that we talk about in hunger and care look like. And so provided seed packets and Play-Doh, and I said, can I task you with creating a little Play-Doh? And so we have a mat that has the hunger offering logo on it, and she did so well. She had 3 peas in a pod. She had a carrot, I think, and it just looked so realistic.
It was a work of art. It was beautiful.
Yes. And so just, again, to have fun and talk about food insecurity and what does that really look like? How can we teach that to children, especially children here in Texas? And so that's an example of engaging, and it did catch people's eyes and how they can engage their children in their ministries revolving hunger. And so for Congreso, last year I was like, okay, this is an event I've gone to for many years, and I've seen the different booths. I've seen what typically engages students. And so I thought, I want to make this fun and use a game. And so I did bring spicy chips. I brought a variety of hot Cheetos and spicy.
Y'all, Irene loves spicy chips.
So I do have to point out that there was a group that brought some this year, and I thought, I don't think y'all brought it before. I think CLC started a trend on that.
Yeah, you did.
And I feel a little guilty for all the Red 40 that we're providing. However, we had a nice balance of small oranges that we also took this year. And so some people grabbed
little
that.
Cuties, right?
Yeah, a lot of people were going for the oranges. I was proud of them.
Yes. And so so this year what I did is a tic-tac-toe game on the floor. And so the bean bags had the Do Justice, Love Kindness, Walk Humbly. And the first day, because people are getting there, some people have traveled from across the state to get to Congreso. Yeah. And so I just wanted it, instead of here's this dump of information, as soon as you get here, how can we just connect with you? How can we get to know you? What city are you from? Where church did you come with? Because again, Congreso has students, some who have grown up in the church or in the church, but then some who don't. They just invite friends from their school or neighborhood to be able to, or their sports team to come out and join them for a fun weekend with their friends. And so we just played tic-tac-toe. And after that first day, I moved on to what I was really more excited about, and that was creating small snippets, small videos, and asking students and attendees what's an issue that matters to them. It was definitely a kind of a beta pilot opportunity because I think that students, we know that they like to advocate and speak up about certain things, the students in this generation, and how can we help them connect with what the CLC does. And so that was the goal, is being able, we didn't really use the props as much, but I still have them because the props were our policy priorities. I also had a little thought bubble for kind of the biblical perspectives. I think I had like some giving hands to reflect hunger and care, but how can we help connect people of all ages about what the CLC, what we try to do, because we speak to such a variety of audiences in the different workshops and that we've done this year so far, and in previous years. We have such a wide audience, and we have a lot of rich resources for our churches to be able to use and implement.
Yeah, you just do such a good job with engaging them, though. So it's really fun to be there and to watch.
Thank you.
And to watch our executive director, Dr. Guaneri, like willingly lose in a game of tic-tac-toe to his grandson was also kind of adorable.
Yes, it was precious. Katie, did you or Eve win?
I won, but I gave her, I think she picked the chips. I don't think she went for the orange.
But you also gave a workshop, right? And it wasn't just you, it was you and your husband. Could you share with us what your workshop was about?
Yeah, so I think being in the hunger and care space for almost 3 years now, it was different to get a request on relationships. And so I thought, wow, that's something that I feel like I've spoken on before somewhere at some point. It may have been Congreso or maybe just like a girls' conference. But this was different because I think this was the first time I've done a workshop with Stephen, period, but then also to talk about relationships. And so the theme of Congreso this year was obey, and it was really obeying the commandment to go therefore and make disciples. And what we thought in the relationships one was taking it more into how do we relate to others. And so we wanted to expand even into kind of the church hurt talk. And what was really funny is that we found after the first workshop, because we did it 3 times, is they wanted to hear the tea on our relationship and how Stephen and I met. And so literally we ended.
I'm so shocked that youth would want that.
Yes, exactly. We ended because we were trying to go a different route and more kind of bigger perspectives and asking questions related to their school, church, but they definitely, as soon as we shared the novela, the soap opera of our story, they all woke up. And so we're like, all right, we have to lead with that on round 2 of the workshop. And we did. And so, but it was each audience in the 3 workshops were so different, but it was so neat to, we had a girl, someone come up to us afterwards, and we ended up taking the conversation. There was another female leader in the room. And so her and I took the conversation with this student afterwards, and it was just such a beautiful time to really get to hear what's going on among our students. And I just appreciate the boldness of their vulnerability to open up and say here.
Oh, yeah.
And not just I'm struggling, but this is what I'm struggling with, this specifically.
Wow.
And that to me was just, I was in awe of the vulnerability and the honesty. And so being able to really speak into that, to tie in to scripture, but also grace. Like I think that was evident that there was not this, I feel like the student really didn't understand the beauty of grace. And it was just, I have to follow this rule or I already messed up. And it was so neat to be able to just encourage her. And so it was a great time.
Yay.
So David, you gave a workshop as well, and also 3 times in a row, which I am amazed. And
marathon.
Yes, David's workshop, actually, I feel like I was timing it because I didn't want to let out students too early because then they would interrupt his workshop. And so that was a fun like, where is David at? But yeah, so what was your topic?
Yeah, so the topic they gave me, and I speak a lot on ministry to people who struggle with LGBTQ issues from different angles, from trainings for ministers to families learning how to love your loved ones if they identify, to if you yourself say you struggle, like here are some scriptures to encourage you with God's truth. But I always love when they give me a title because it always makes me think, how am I going to repackage this? And the title they gave me for my messages was Responding to LGBTQ with Grace and Truth. And so I finally got to do something I've been wanting to do for a while, which is unpack Jesus' interaction with the Samaritan woman as a way for us to get our guidelines for how to interact with people who are outcasts, with people who maybe we don't always feel comfortable talking to. Jesus embraced the awkward. You see that in a lot of his conversations. He says stuff that I would definitely not say. And he walks into conversations that I would be like, this is outside of my comfort zone. Lord, I'm going to wait for your spirit to really force me to have this conversation with this person because I just don't want to. And just the love he has for people. So I used the conversation with the Good Samaritan woman and just brought up 5 points. One was that Jesus would talk to anyone, a social outcast, a political zealot, Roman government sellout. There's no one who Jesus wouldn't talk to about the love of the Father and the good news that he was bringing them. Secondly, he showed her kindness. It's kind of missed in our translations when Jesus calls her woman. For us, that sounds kind of disrespectful. Woman?
Woman? Yeah, I wouldn't try that.
Yeah, but for him, it was a respectful title of how you would address someone back then. So he was treating her with dignity, not just having the conversation, but the language he used to talk to her. There was no labeling language that he used. Instead, he was treating her like a human being with dignity, made in God's image. Even though he knew her background and her story. For us, the challenge there is Jesus knew her story, and yet he still talked to her, even knowing that. And I feel like when Jesus spoke to her and said, yes, you've had 5 husbands, but the person you're with now, and the person you're with now is not your husband. You've spoken rightly that you're not married. It wasn't, I don't think he said it in like a, ha, gotcha, you liar sort of way. What people don't realize is it was actually very common to have been, for a woman back then, to have been married 2 or 3 times because just of the fatality rates of simple things like a cut on your hand or the crime back then, or just diseases. People didn't live as long, and it was very common to see a woman of 2 or 3 husbands. So for her to have gone through 5, I think it's him recognizing there was a lot of pain in her past. Maybe there were some bad decisions on her part, but if any of those were by divorce, that wasn't her asking for the divorce. That was the husband asking for the divorce. So this is a woman who felt unwanted, who felt ostracized, and Jesus is saying, hey, I see your story, and I'm still talking to you anyways. And I feel like the challenge for us then with people who we don't relate well to, or we want to be judgmental towards, but we actually need to learn how to have more compassion with grace and truth. It's just realizing if you just sit down and listen to their story, you will find, 1, that there's something you assumed about them that was just completely wrong. And 2, there was something in their story that you can absolutely relate to. And it's going to help the Spirit unlock compassion within you for someone who you might have had a more judgmental disposition towards in the first place. So Jesus showed her kindness. He also told her the source of his kindness, which was himself. So for us, the source of the kindness is Jesus. When she says, how can you speak to me? I'm a Samaritan and a woman. And then, the parenthetical, and Jesus had no dealings with Samaritans. It's basically like, your whole group of people hates us. How can you talk to me? And Christians definitely have a reputation right now as being hateful towards the LGBTQ community. So when you show kindness towards someone, when you show love to someone who's identified, and then they ask, hey, I thought Christians hated us. Why are you being kind? That's the opportunity to share about the love of Jesus. But also he spoke to her, the truth she needed to hear. And the truth she needed to hear in that moment wasn't, look at the sin, you should feel bad about it. When she switched topics to worship, Jesus was like, well, guess what? God is seeking people to be his worshipers who will worship him in spirit and truth. Basically, he's like, the truth you need to hear right now is that even though you've lived in sin, even though you've been unwanted, God is seeking you to be his worshiper.
That's really good.
That was how I got to share the message. I was so excited to get to do it that way because I always thought it would work out well, and it kind of did. And the response from kids coming up afterwards saying, I have a friend or I have a relative, and they're just like, this has been so helpful. That was really encouraging to me. And one brave young man came up and just shared, my last relationship was a same-sex relationship, and I knew it was wrong, and this has been really helpful to hear. And I just thought that was awesome. And I gave him a hug, and I gave him a free copy of my book.
Love it. So good.
That's awesome. That's really cool.
It's my jam now. I thought for a while, oh, I'm always just talking about this topic. Why can't I talk about family worship? Why can't I talk about, making decisions in gray areas? But God has really blessed this. And there's always so many people, not as a brag on myself, but just, people are thirsty to hear the word sharing how to have compassion and love while holding to our convictions. Yeah. Because this is the world we're living in now.
Yeah. You do it so well, David. And I just, how many voices that we can trust are really speaking into this. And so I feel like, just you also bring in so many different perspectives from the testimonies you've heard from people that have shared, from whether that's personal experience or family members, parents, congregants, whoever. But then also you bring in the unique aspect of just also the gaming and some of the friendships and connections you have there. And
being the dork God created me to be.
Hey, it's work. It is working.
Leaning into it.
Yeah.
We all have to do that. That's what I'm trying to stop pretending to be somebody that you're not. Be the dork God created you to be. So that was a loads of fun. Congreso is always a blast. The youth event, for Texas Baptist in Espanol. But then we also went to Pursue at the WMU, and there all three of us did workshops. Maybe that's why John's not here with us today, because he didn't do a workshop.
He didn't do workshops.
No, he was busy day in and day out advocating at the Capitol, sometime until the wee hours in the morning. But Katie, could you share with us about the workshop that you did? Because again, like you guys have heard me speak on LGBTQ because I'm doing it like all the time. But I haven't heard some of your workshops. Like, Katie, I know you do one on like AI stuff, and you've given it several times, and I've never been able to sit in on it.
I finally did this time.
Oh, then maybe we should ask Irene to give us a summary of Katie's.
This workshop is an interesting one because of the nature of just the technology field is rapidly changing. This workshop has evolved multiple times. So honestly, David, even if you had heard it, it depends on when you heard it, like, say 2 years ago versus the one from just a couple weeks ago. They're almost not even the same thing. Like, there's themes that are the same, but as the text is changing, so is the theme. Ultimately, what I'm trying to help us think through carefully is, at the end of the day, what does it mean to be a human? You guys know that I'm particularly passionate about the image of God, and human dignity is really kind of being a foundational thing. And what we're seeing in our culture right now is this rapid development of technology that is starting to really make us question, I think at a very fundamental level, what does it mean to be human? Is it our ability to think? Is it our ability to rationalize? What value do we assign to people? Frequently, we assign the ability to do output or, maybe to make money as indicators of value or dignity. And we're really starting to wrestle with questions like this as you see technology able to do the work of a human. What value do we assign to that then? And what value do we assign to the humans? And what's the difference between the two? And so the first half of the conversation, I think, is just trying to help people think about technology in general and how we consume it at a very, very basic level, try to explain how some of this technology is working, because I think even though we're trying to not impose value systems into it, you can't take away the human bias that's going into the technology right now. Yeah. And so one of the examples I give people is when you're talking about like these chatbots like ChatGPT, and we do a kind of an example of what a large language model is doing when it's doing this thing called predictive text. And so we say, twinkle, twinkle, little star, and you automatically in your head say, how I wonder what you are. And it's a predictive thing. But then switch it around a little bit and you say peanut butter, and most people are going to say jelly. But I give the example in my home, actually it's peanut butter and honey, because my kids don't you like honey sandwich?
And someone in the workshop said and bananas.
But it just really depends on the value system, right? Do you value jelly or do you value the honey more? And connecting it to these bigger programs, there's not a lot of transparency or even clarity on why is an LLM picking jelly over honey, and whose ethics get to guard or dictate that it's going to be honey instead of peanut butter or something like that. And so I think at a practical level, we have an opportunity, especially in our ministry assignment as Texas Baptist, to speak to this, to make sure that Texas Baptists are aware that there's a lot going on just below the surface, even in these technologies that we're utilizing. But also, I don't think the sky is falling. I think there's a lot of really cool opportunity for us to utilize some of this new tech in kingdom building ways. One of the most popular ones that I think a lot of people are excited about is Bible translation, or the ability to kind of recreate what we saw in the first century. David, you know that the gospel spread at the beginning of the first century because of Koine Greek. So many people were able to speak the shared language, and it empowered this rapid sharing of the gospel. We're kind of living in a moment like that right now, where language barriers aren't what they used to be because I've got an app on my phone that can translate me into any language I'm trying to communicate. And so that's really exciting. And there's a lot of different ways. But I think we need to be intentional and thoughtful in this new world that we're walking into, where you've got, humans who are kind of walking away from anchored identities, like David, you're experiencing in your workshops, where we're trying to figure out who am I and what does that mean. And then we also have at the same time machines that are trying to be more human and look and sound and talk more human. And so I just firmly believe that God created us, and that there is a really beautiful part of the Christian faith that's just grounded in reality and embodiment, that God created a physical world, that Jesus Christ physically became incarnate and was pleased as man, with men to dwell. I think there's something very physical about the human experience and about the Christian experience in particular, that there's something really physical to it. And so the workshop also explores that, like just reminding us that a part of the Christian experience is physical. And even things that are happening online are actually impacting our bodies as well. And so kind of going into some of those experiences as well. It's a fun workshop to do. And you guys have experienced this too. Every single workshop is a little different based on the audience in the room. And so the one Irene was a part of, we had like an 11-year-old and an 87-year-old.
Yes, it was so mixed.
It was one of the most diverse groups I've ever spoken to. And so there was a lot of just even making sure that you understand the language or the vernacular that you're hearing right now, right? And so that's a fun, introduction to it. And then the workshop right after that, I would say 90% of the people in the room had already utilized, ChatGPT or had some familiarity with it, and were ready to kind of like, let's talk about this now. And so it was a very different vibe and engagement to it. And I love that. I love having meaningful, thoughtful conversations. And I think that, that's the common theme in the work that all of us do, even though we have different lanes or different lenses we're looking at. It's trying to equip Texas Baptist in particular, but trying to equip believers with what they need to be, faithful gospel representatives in their community. How do we proclaim the gospel in a way that still also loves my neighbor as myself and is thoughtful in its approach? So that's one of the workshops that I've been doing that's kind of hops around all over the place.
So how far are we away from the evangelbot who can hear someone's particular qualms with Christianity, be it moral or apologetic, and then give the correct, like, it's Eric Hernandez, it's me, it's you, it's everyone's brains put together, and then it shares with them, it speaks to them like Jesus did with the woman at the well, the truth that they need to hear in that moment to lead them to Christ.
Honestly, David, I think that there's some similar things like that already out there that's kind of wild. But
yes.
I think you all saw on the news, there's even chatbots that take on the personality of like a priest that's offering like forgiveness of sins and things like that. It gets into some pretty murky things pretty fast. So which is why I think we should be talking about it, though. So what do we do when someone who's maybe a member of our church is like, hey, I was talking with the priest Jesus, on my computer the other day, and this is what it told me. What do you think about that? What are we going to do when people are talking to priest Jesus?
Or Pastor Katie Fruget that emailed me.
Spam email.
Spam, not real.
And I also appreciate though that on the in your workshop, Katie, though, when you said like the sky isn't falling, you mentioned some specific things that were good and happening. And I was on the row with one of probably the older person in the room, and she when you mentioned that how we're using it, AI is being used for Bible translations. We really are so close to getting this done, to translating the Bible for every tribe, every tongue. And it was so neat because she turned and said, I've been working on that for years, and that's exciting to hear. And so it can't, there's some good that can come from it.
Yeah.
Yes.
I'll just always go, whenever technology advances, I always go back to the pure, all things are pure, and to those who are defiled and unbelieving, nothing is pure. So any new advancement, it's always going to be twisted in some way. It's going to be turned into a weapon. There's going to be that, but the pure, following Christ and asking, how can we use this for his kingdom? We'll utilize tools, hopefully, in a God-honoring way.
Yes.
Absolutely.
Irene, you show me up so much. When I do booth interactions, I just bring my video games. You do
she does interactive games.
You do
with food
embodied
giveaways.
activities. I'm just plugging them into technology. You do embodied activities. But to top that off, you also gave a workshop at Pursue in Spanish.
Yes.
And me with my last name Sanchez, I'm not even fluent in Spanish. So again, tell us more about why you rock so hard, and what was this topic? If you wouldn't mind sharing with us about you. I'm not even going to try and pronounce it, even though I know how to. I just don't trust myself on the podcast in front of you. Tell us what the title of it was.
I've actually heard there's a thing about that, of kind of freezing in your brain, even though if you know how to say it.
Huh.
Yep. Yes.
Yes. So the workshop I led was Involucrar a las mujeres en el ministerio.
That's how I would have said it.
Same. Definitely the same.
I mean, it sounded good, but I'm sure I butchered it when I gave it. It's kind of like people trying to pronounce frigé. And so this was fun because this is the second time I've done a WMU Pursue workshop in Spanish. And I feel like this is something else that was out of the hunger and care space, which I feel like I've been in the weeds in. And so getting to peel back and really this is involving women in ministry. And so I really wasn't sure, okay, are we talking, what aspect of women in ministry we're talking about?
Right.
And so I went to Dr. Benny Bryant, and I just said, hey, this is a topic that was given to me, and this is your space. Like, this is what you've been doing. And I want to know, have you had a response from Spanish speaking women? Have you, is that an area of engagement that you've been in? And so I really kind of leaned in on her expertise on what she's hearing, and I've been a part of a few of her listening sessions, or even really it's networking, because it's Women in Ministry Network is what Benny's doing, and just hearing some of the different voices. And you really do, you have a range of women who are called to pastoral ministry, and you have women who say, have a different perspective on women's ministry in more of a traditional format. And so I love just getting to know the women in the room, and really I wanted to provide a time also for the women to be able to share their experiences. And so I did that workshop a little bit more testimonial based, and which is always brave when you give people in the room the mic. And so
yeah,
it was so good. So I went to Dr. Guarnetti's workshop the day before just to really get a feel also for the audience, because there were fewer workshops in Spanish, but just to get a feel for what the conversations were. And so I also allowed that to guide the conversations. And I feel like at that point because it was Saturday morning of the 2-day event, I feel like, have women had a chance to really digest what they've been hearing and talk about it. And so really I used it as an opportunity to hear, what are other groups doing? What are other women in ministry doing? And how could they encourage one another? And then I think my favorite part was taking the time to do it, because I think a lot of times I'm guilty of in workshops that I provide tools, I provide resources, but especially in some of the resilience ones that I do, I want to give the opportunity in that space, in that time, to practice it, to do something practical. So what we did is I had just these blank note cards and prayed and asked, for God to reveal at least one woman who we could encourage and who we could write a note of encouragement to. And so we took some time in the workshop to write that note, and I did it myself. And so that was just a really beautiful practice because I think, again, we have programs, but going back to people and just that human connection, how can we take the time to encourage one another? And so a written note for some people may not mean as much, but for others, it could mean the world to receive a written note card. And so, and then we closed with a time of prayer. And so that I think was also just so neat to see the women who, a lot of them, because they were in groups, they came together, just seeing them have that time to just connect in prayer. And so I will say that was a beautiful piece also because I had a wonderful time networking with a Texas Baptist missionary at Pursue who works in the space of human trafficking. And her and I got to chat about prayer and the power of prayer. And what was so powerful to me is something that she said was she doesn't enter a trafficking space unless she has a prayer team dedicated for that region. And she said that she experiences more spiritual warfare in prayer when she's actively praying for a specific area as opposed to actually walking into the brothel. And
wow.
it was an eye opener of truly the power in prayer. And so I used the time together in the workshop with the ladies to be able to just take that time to encourage one another in a written note and also in prayer.
That's so cool. I love that you were able to challenge them to kind of act, don't just come and consume something, but let's do something about this now. Yeah. That's really cool.
So to our listeners, to our pastors, youth ministers, churches, people planning events, you can find us at these TXB at our Texas Baptist conferences and events, but you can also invite us to your churches, to your associational meetings, to your D-Nows even. I've done a couple D-Nows, and you can go to our website, texasclc.org, and at the bottom of the page, there's a contact request form. One of my favorite things really in this job is when a church from a small town reaches out and is like, would you even be able to come here? We're all the way out here in Nowhereville, and we can't pay you, but if you could still come. I'm like, you already do. You give to the cooperative program. You already paid for me. And so I'm, absolutely I'll come out there. But big churches will go to those as well. But nothing delights me more than when a church that's like, okay, this is a wild shot. Would you come to? It's not wild at all. Actually, that's what we're here to do. And we love doing it. We delight in doing it.
That's right.
So what are some of the other workshops that you provide, Irene and Katie?
Well, I do a couple of different ones. I'd say that just my foundation and my background with the image of God, anything really related even just to human life and the issues that trickle from that. Like, I love going into all of those branches because there's a million different ways that could go. And so I've been at churches talking about dignity and disability because we've got some issues just not really thinking through from a theological perspective. How do we deal with disability within the church with our special needs ministries and things like that? But it also expanded into other places too. I was at a BSM just last Friday, I think it was, and we were talking about kind of a biblical approach to what it means to be pro-life, to really expand it out. And we talked about all sorts of issues that did not touch abortion, that were pro-life issues, like IVF, like the Uyghurs in China, and all sorts of things. And how do we approach this knowing that part of the foundational concepts of Christianity is that Jesus is the way, the truth, and the life, and that there's a lot of the Christian faith that's grounded in God telling us, I care about life, and so why should we care about it too? And so lots of different places that those conversations go, and it's always an honor and fun to try to hash it out, try to think carefully and intentionally about all sorts of things that we face in our culture.
I really like how your talks go deep into the weeds of the why, because I feel like your average Christian knows what we believe when it comes to issues of abortion and the value of human life, but we don't know as much the why. And the why leads us to worship because it leads us to the God created us and the dignity that he gave us, making us in his image. And I love that you get into all of that.
Thank you.
That's good. Yeah. So, and even while speaking to women in ministry in Spanish and then the relationships, I feel like it's not too far stretched. I started out at Texas Baptist on contract for women's ministry and as a Hispanic women's ministry specialist. And so, and women's health, that's kind of that's the background I have. And so more recently, the trainings that I've done and workshops have been on resiliency. When I think of community ministry, how can we encourage those, especially those that are doing this full time, those who are doing community ministry, whether that's at the church or parachurch ministry, how can we encourage them to stay committed to their call? And so when we speak about resiliency, it's that perseverance in the call. And so that is probably one of my favorite conversations, is being able to encourage and listen when thinking of the Texas Baptist missionary who has been in the human trafficking space for 16 years, being able to ask questions. And so she even talked about, we do vicarious trauma. I told her, I said, I love hearing that. And there's another side. And so it's not the either or, it's both and. It's two sides of the coin. And so that's, we hear about burnout, secondary trauma, post-traumatic stress, and those are so real and valid. And we have to, how can we help people work through that to continue in their calling for as long as they're called to that. And so there are seasons for everything. I do believe that. And so in addition to that, reflecting on the growth. And so that's the resiliency aspect, is reflecting on how did we grow? What character aspects, what practical resources did we gain in this line of work, and how can we remain committed to the call? Because a lot of these, especially when you think of trafficking, it's a trauma heavy field. And so a lot of community ministry, you are hearing stories and experiences that are very trauma heavy. And so how can we encourage people to persevere in those spaces?
And actually, some of our workshop topics we've done on our podcast. So if you're just listening to an older episode of our podcast and you're like, well, I'd like for someone to come speak on that. Well, you can have us come.
Yes.
Yeah, some of your workshops are even, we've done the gray areas, right? And the making decisions.
You
did that
poverty and Proverbs. Yeah, family worship in the home. Yep.
John can do workshops too.
John can do workshops too when he's not during legislative session. Go ahead, Katie.
I was just about to plug John. I'm so glad you guys said that. I don't know if it's been official, but I'll even say that John, when it's not the legislative session next year, he's going to be a keynote at one of our universities talking on religious liberty for a Baptist Distinctives conference, and it's going to be awesome, and I'm so excited for that.
Yes.
And really, I can't think of anyone better to be able to speak to that. He's just got such a great mind for just so many different issues like that. So yeah, John does workshops too.
Yes. Well, and wasn't We Don't Talk About Lotto, I think our highest listened or downloaded podcast episode, it's up there. And so, yeah, all the different topics, whether it's policy related, there's a lot of variety in there.
We've got to give Katie some credit for coming up with the title for that episode, though.
Yes. I think it was a team effort.
About Lotto. It was just a zeitgeist thing. It was perfectly timed. This is weird. Can that be my what is good, that John is going to be a keynote at speaking on religious liberty? That is like the coolest thing I've heard all day. I'm so excited for that.
I don't know if it's official, so we can strike this from the record.
Okay. And now for our next segment, what might be good. All right, so you've heard about what we could do and where to reach us. We'll include this in the show notes, but also we do like to end by asking what is good. So Irene and Katie, who wants to go first?
Yeah, so I went to the Baylor Collaborative on Hunger and Poverty, their Together at the Table conference last week, and was really encouraged. I'm amazed at what the Episcopal Church, what they have created for the hunger space in addressing food insecurity and working together in that was really encouraging. And so as a result of everything I took in, I even told Dr. Jeremy Everett, who leads the Baylor Collaborative, I said, I need time to really process everything I learned here. But one of the things I immediately did when I came home, I started a garden. And that is not like me, guys. Rebecca on our team, she gifted me this beautiful succulent arrangement, and it died. And so I have always said, can I grow a green thumb? Because that's not me. But something landed differently in the whole creation care conversation. I've heard a lot of this before: regenerative gardening, regenerative farming, and sustainable agriculture. I've heard these things before, but something in the mix, it landed differently this time. So I have been tending to my garden for almost a week now. And
nothing's died yet?
No, nothing has died yet.
Lord.
I've even taken my algorithm on my social media has changed, and
that's how they get you.
Yes. It's so neat, and I love that. One of the things is that soil helps to touching soil helps to increase serotonin, and just there's something beautiful about that. And so I'm also excited on the cost effectiveness of this and the regenerative gardening that I'm doing, to be able to share that in some of the hunger and care spaces, to say this is something we can really do. Like, yes, I live on a bit of land, but I'm using a smaller space and smaller resources right now to get the experience of how I can share that with others, and to include them and encourage the regenerative gardening conversation.
Is there some way you have the garden fortified or protected? I'm just thinking, if we tried to do it in my backyard, between the squirrels and the stray cats and the raccoons, our garden would stand no chance.
So I'm curious to see what animals will get to it, because we have even like the moles that dig up our dirt.
Oh, they go underneath.
Yes, and nothing has touched it so far. So far, it's only been a week, guys, so there's still plenty of time. Nothing's even
they're all just rubbing their tiny little claw hands.
No, there's nothing protecting it right now. And that's one of the aspects of regenerative gardening, is really kind of taking it back into nature. It's really neat.
Well, how about you, Katie? What is good?
What is good is that this is Easter week, and at the time of this recording, several years ago, really, I think even before I had kids, I read the book Surprised by Hope by N.T. Wright, and I highly recommend it for anyone.
Yes.
It's a great read. And I was really challenged after reading that book to be more intentional in the celebration of Easter. That as much as we make of Christmas, and as awesome as Christmas is, I love Christmas, don't get me wrong, like, we're all in on Christmas. But do we equally celebrate the holiest of all the celebrations? That the whole reason Christmas is good is because Easter came. And so I love Easter week. We're kind of going into the darker side of it, and I try to intentionally allow for there to be some uncomfortable just feeling of sensing something's not right now, and trying to go through that process in anticipation of the joy of Easter morning. I'm really excited. My kids have really bought in on this idea too, of just celebrating Easter well, and just the buzz that my 5-year-old has about Easter coming just makes me so thrilled. She's so excited for Sunday, and she just can't wait. We really try to celebrate it well, so we are planning a huge menu. We usually make it a feasting day, and so we start off in the morning with a huge breakfast, and we basically just feast the whole day and celebrate, going back and forth. And so yeah, I'm really looking forward to this weekend and it being the Easter celebration.
That is really cool.
Yeah. David, what about you? What's good?
This past Sunday, our church voted in a new pastor.
No way!
Yay!
Yes.
Congratulations, Meadow Ridge!
So yes, we'd been without a pastor for almost a year and a half, and our pastor search committee did a great job. But I gotta say, y'all, like, Texas Baptist knows how to support our churches, because they were all over this. So I was sort of like heading pulpit filling for about 9 months. And then I had to get the thyroid surgery. I was like, you know what? I'm exhausted. I need my weekends back. So I stepped away at that time. And we brought in an interim pastor provided for us through Texas Baptist. And he kind of helped and guided the pastor search committee in the process. And then on top of that, one of the people who applied was recommended by Gary Stidman, who is associate director within our BSM, right? Or I can't. What is his title?
BSM. Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yes.
And he said, I have this guy who I think would be great for your church. I had discipled him, and so I'm just going to ask him, like, let me know when it's time to apply, because I'm going to ask him to apply. And he grew up through the UTA BSM, and he's our pastor now. So really, Texas Baptist just kind of hugged and carried us through this whole process.
Wow.
And we have the common friend of Gary Stidman. So my first time meeting him, I'm thinking like, all right, I'm just going to say hi. And he's probably have so many people he's going to want to meet. And he's like, hey, Gary Stidman told me about you. Let's connect soon. I'm like, yes.
Yay.
I may also have gained a new friend, but no pressure there. I mean, he's got, anyways. So what is good is Texas Baptist carrying our pastorless churches, and mine was one of them. And now we can say, by the grace of God and the amazing service of our humble lay people at our church, and the way people just stepped up and filled the gaps in while we were missing a lot of leadership actually within our church, man, our church is hungry for new vision and new leadership. We were at almost max capacity in our sanctuary last Sunday when he came to do a sermon before we voted on him. And that just said a lot right there.
That's so good. Congratulations to David and to Meadow Ridge Baptist.
Yes.
Yay.
So exciting.
All right. So on that note, this has been another episode of What is Good. We thank you all for joining us. And we look forward to, we're taking a break for our hiatus, but we look forward to coming back with more episodes in the coming months.
With Irene and John.
With Irene and John. Maybe all four, will be in the same place at the same time again someday. All right. Goodbye, everyone.
Bye.
We need to start the next episode where all four of us are back with like the guess who's back again.
Yeah, we will get copyright struck. I'll do a uke version of it.
There we go.
I don't know why the one in my head is the boys are back in town.
That works too. Boys are back in town.
But right now we're just singing I Want You Back to John.
I want you back. Da, da,
Oh no, it's the Jackson 5. I want you back.
Yes.
I think I just showed my millennial card in my reference to the.
Or I showed my Gen X card is really what it was.
I mean,
That's
you
what was
said that,
happening.
not me.